Thanks for joining as I teach you how to make the letter banner. Cut out and separate the letters, leaving white space around them. Cut your letter fabric slightly larger than the actual size of the letter. Then place the shiny or the bumpy side of the fusible interfacing down on the back side of the letter fabric. And you want to iron on the back just so that the tacky glue part of the interfacing doesn't stick to your iron and ruin your iron. Then cut out your letter fabric and pin on the paper letter. And make sure that your fabric is oriented the correct way if you have a design. When you're ready to cut out your letter, make sure you use sharp non-fabric scissors. You don't want to ruin your fabric scissors for this part. And the main reason why I left the white space before you cut it out with the fabric is laziness. If you're going to cut out the letter, you might as well have the fabric behind it, and then your letter's ready for the next project. Next, place the frame template on the front flag piece with the arrows facing up. Place your fabric letter in the center of the frame. W is the only one that doesn't fit inside, so use those center notches to center it properly. I'm using hemming tape behind the letters just to stabilize the letters while I sew and so that it lays flat. You could also use basic stick glue, and you don't have to stabilize the whole letter, just a few spots to anchor it in place. Set your machine to a zigzag stitch. Length between 0 and 1 by go closer to 0, and width between 3 and 4. Test it out on a scrap fabric to make sure you like it. Starting out, put your needle in on the outside of the letter. When pivoting around an exterior corner like this one, sew all the way to the corner tip, ending with your needle on the outside edge. Pivot and then continue sewing. And you notice that I didn't do a reverse stitch at the beginning because we're going to sew back on it when we finish. With interior angles, you're going to sew past that corner, put your needle in the letter fabric, pivot, and then continue sewing. With both exterior and interior corners, your stitches will overlap. And here I'm just sewing over the beginning stitches. And the goal will be to have all of the edges covered. Zigzag stitches tend to shrink the fabric it's sewn on, so double check that your back piece is still smaller than your front piece. The top edge should be flush and 1/16 of an inch showing around the sides. First pin the corners so that those are anchored, and then the sides if needed. Set your machine to straight stitch, length between 3 and 4, and width is 0. Position your needle so that it's 1/4 of an inch from the right side of your presser foot. Either with a needle positioner or the stitch width can move your needle side to side. I'm sewing it with the back piece on top because I just have better control pulling the fabric on top and pushing the fabric on the bottom. And again, because the back is smaller, you want to stretch it while you're sewing, and this bottom edge is harder because it's a shorter distance that you have to make them match at the corners, if that makes sense. But even with these non-stretch cotton fabrics, it still worked out. And feel free to use as many pins or clips as you need. Here's a little trick in turning the corners right side out. Fold the seam allowance on one side over the stitch line, hold the fabric in the corner, then fold over the other edge and hold the overlapping corner in place. Use your other hand to turn it right side out and transfer that hold to the other hand. Keep a good grip and flip out the fabric. I used the end of the hemming ruler to help me push out the corner. You can see that the overlap stayed in place and made a really clean corner. This part is really satisfying because when you iron the back, you should see just a sliver of the front piece poking out, which means this lighter color back piece is not going to be showing from the front. And just in case you're wondering why I'm using muslin on the back, I just didn't want to use my pretty scraps on the side that wouldn't show. For the size A banner, measure 2 feet from the end, and that'll be the start of your first flag. For the size B banners, mark the center of your ribbon and place the center letter with your pin in the middle of the flag, or split the center with the 2 center letters. Pre-folded bias tape will be the easiest option because it stays in place better, so you can make sure that you're sewing through all of the layers. And that's why I like using pins, because they help me know if I'm going to be catching the other side of the ribbon. Leave a 1/4 inch gap between each flag. Once the flags are all pinned, go ahead and sew on your ribbon as close as you can to the open edge. When you get to the flags, you don't have to reverse. Just make sure that you are going through all of the layers as you sew over the flags. Finish off the other end of your ribbon and then you're done. This project is a great way to use up your scraps and very customizable. So I hope you enjoyed making this with me. I have created a template for this banner, so you can find the link in the description. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments, and I'd love to see what you make, so find me on Instagram at ChooseMade.